This is the Biblical Unitarian Podcast.
Hey YouTube, how's it going? My name is Dustin Smith and welcome to the Biblical Unitarian Podcast, the podcast that aims to start conversations about the oneness and unity of God and about the humanity of Jesus. Today, we are looking at my top 5 differences between God and Jesus. And despite the fact that interpreters of the Bible tend to confuse God and Jesus, there are hundreds of differences between the two of them. So here are my top 5 differences. We're going to start from number 5 and work our way down to number 1. Number 5, God cannot be tempted, but Jesus was tempted. Let's look at the passages that demonstrate my number 5 point. James chapter 1 and verse 13 says, "Let no one say when he is tempted, I am being tempted by God, for God cannot be tempted by evil." James 1:13 says God cannot be tempted by evil, but clearly, according to the Gospels and the book of Hebrews, Jesus Christ was tempted. Hebrews chapter 4, verse 15, where it says, "For we do not have a high priest who cannot sympathize with our weaknesses, but one who has been tempted in all things as we are, yet without sin." So there you have it. Point number 5. God cannot be tempted, but Jesus clearly was tempted. Number 4, God does what he pleases, but Jesus cannot do anything of his own initiative. And so let's look in Psalm 115, verse 3, where it says, "But our God is in the heavens. He does whatever he pleases." There, God can do whatever he wants. But Jesus is much more reserved on this. John 5:30 has Jesus himself saying, "I can do nothing on my own initiative." So God can do whatever he wants. God does what he pleases. Jesus cannot do anything of himself. He cannot do anything of his own initiative. Number 3, Jesus is a member of the human race. And clearly, God is not a member of the human race. God is the one true God. There are many places in the Bible to where Jesus is described as a man, as a human being. But the passage I want to look at today is where Jesus calls himself a human being. And guess what? It's in the Gospel of John, chapter 8, verse 40, where Jesus says, "But now you are trying to kill me, a man who told you the truth that I heard from God." So Jesus there calls himself a man, and he distinguishes himself from the God who taught him truth. So there you have it. Jesus is a human being, but God is fully divine as the one true God. Number 2, Jesus has limited knowledge. Yes, there are some things that even Jesus himself does not know. And he freely admits this in Matthew 24:36, where Jesus says, "But about that day and hour, no one knows, neither the angels of heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father." There in Matthew 24:36, in regard to the day of the second coming, Jesus says the angels don't know it. Jesus himself doesn't know it, but only the Father knows. Only one person knows it, and that is the Father. Jesus doesn't know it. Thereby, Jesus has limited knowledge, but clearly God has a full knowledge. And now you've all been waiting for my number 1 difference between God and Jesus, and that number 1 difference is God cannot die, but Jesus himself died. This is one of the most important points of the Christian faith, is the death of Jesus, and Jesus truly had to die wholly and authentically in order for the Christian faith to make any sense. So we can have passages that talk about the death of Jesus, which there are dozens and dozens and dozens, but I like this one here in Romans chapter 6 and verse 9, where it says, "Knowing that Christ, having been raised from the dead, is never to die again. Death no longer is master over him." That indicates that Jesus did die. He was raised from the dead. And for a time being, death was actually master over Jesus. However, God, the true God, our Heavenly Father, is immortal, meaning he is incapable of dying. 1 Timothy 1:17 says, "Now to the King, eternal, immortal, invisible, the only true God." God there is eternal and immortal. Jesus died and death was master over him until God raised Jesus from the dead. So there you have it. Those are my top 5 points. And based on those, we can actually discern 3 facts upon which we can all agree. Here are these 3 facts. Number 1, there are multiple irreconcilable differences between God and Jesus. You can't find ways to just talk your way out of those differences. Clearly, God and Jesus are different. Number 2, the status, nature, and attributes of God are greater than those belonging to Jesus. Clearly, God is greater than Jesus in his attributes, in his status, and even in his nature. And number 3, Jesus is a human being who is distinct from the one true God. There you have it. There are those 3 conclusions. Those are my top 5 differences between God and Jesus. I'm curious to hear your differences between God and Jesus. Do you have a different set of top 5? Be sure to leave those in the comment section below. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share for more videos from the Biblical Unitarian Podcast. If you have not yet already, be sure you subscribe to the audio podcast on iTunes. My name is Dustin Smith. Until next time, you folks, take care.